Who could this mysterious individual be? Welcome back, Book Dragons. I'm so glad you joined me. The book I'm going to be reviewing today is The Mysterious Mr. Quin by Agatha Christie. This is a collection of short stories about an individual known as Harley Quinn. Even though it's a book of short stories, it's not your typical short story collection. With most short story collections, the stories are pretty much unrelated to each other. That's not the case here. Each short story builds on this character of Mr. Quin to the point that once you get to the final short story, you get certain revelations about who Mr. Quin is. And so it's a very unique way of writing it. These were compiled into one volume from staggered releases, so they were not always in this format, but now they're all collected for us, and they paint a picture of this individual who seems to pop up at just the right time and in just the right place, as if he had never been there before, and then after everything is said and done, the mystery's been solved, he just kind of isn't there anymore. He's a very enigmatic and somewhat mercurial individual. Now, all of these short stories start off following a character by the name of Mr. Satterthwaite, or Satterweight, or Sauerkraut, as my friend Mona Lisa from Mona Lisa Reads jokingly calls him, because we really can't figure out how to pronounce his name. I'm going to put it here on the screen so that you can see. And anyway, Mr. Satterweight is a rather remarkable gentleman. He's in his 60s. He's quite intellectual. You get the impression that he's fairly well off, kind of an aristocrat. He's well known by a lot of people, and he specializes in learning things about people. He likes to poke his nose into other people's business, and that makes him kind of a detective of sorts. And the book starts off with the first story. Mr. Satterweight, or whatever, has gotten into the lives of these people, and there is a mystery that needs to be solved, and he encounters Mr. Harley Quinn for the first time. The guy just kind of pops up out of nowhere and seems to have a knack of helping Mr. Satterweight come to the conclusions he needs to solve the mystery. And this is a recurring formula in each of the 12 short stories, that Mr. Satterweight encounters a mystery that needs to be solved, and all of a sudden there's Mr. Harley Quinn acting as a catalyst, if you will, for Mr. Satterweight's spectacular crime-solving skills. And it's really kind of fascinating to read about. Each short story kind of builds on the mythos of this mysterious Mr. Harley Quinn. And it becomes clear as the book goes on that the relation of his name to that of a harlequin may be closer than meets the eye at first. So even though Mr. Quinn is extremely mysterious, that mystique slowly fades away over the course of these stories. So that's why I was saying earlier that it's not necessarily a traditional short story book, because these stories are loosely related to each other in that they reveal more and more of who Mr. Quinn actually is. Pretty much all of the short stories revolve around a mystery that involves the elite or the very rich, and they live in these large mansions and things are happening in these mansions. And it's got a very subtle through line of supernatural mystique, even though it doesn't come right out and say that something supernatural is going on necessarily. It makes you feel like there is. And each short story does have its own cast of secondary characters besides Mr. Quinn and Mr. Satterweight, but they're not really significant characters. It's very obvious that the stories were written to be centered around the two primary characters in the stories. So I'm not going to really go into detail about any of those other characters. I just wanted to focus mainly on Mr. Quin and Mr. Satterwhite. So let's talk about what I liked. I really liked the mystery surrounding Mr. Quin. I think that is absolutely the best part of this collection, and I think that it rather overshadows everything else. Mr. Quin is obviously the most fascinating character in these stories, and the light really shines on that because of him. There were several times in the stories where I was like, okay, so when are we going to encounter Mr. Quin? I just kept waiting and anticipating Mr. Quin to show up, and when he did, I got all excited, right? Because he's the one I'm there for. Not that Mr. Satterwhite is a bad character. He's not. He's very interesting, but Mr. Quin just kind of overshadows him. So I would say that the character work for the two main characters is superb and really well done. And Agatha Christie keeps you guessing throughout the whole book about, who really is this Mr. Quin, and is he just a man, or is he more than just a man? Is he a ghost? Is he a magician? Is he something else? You just don't know. So I really liked that Agatha Christie kept us guessing the whole time about who Mr. Quin was. I also really enjoyed watching the mystery play out in each story and trying to figure out who done it and waiting to see how the team of Mr. Quin and Mr. Satterwhite would play off of each other to the eventual conclusion of solving these mysteries. It was quite a lot of fun, and I think it was uniquely done. Now, there are a couple of things that I didn't like about the book. The biggest being the consistency between the stories. Some stories are really good, some stories are just okay. There weren't any of the stories that I could say that I didn't really enjoy, but I definitely enjoyed some more than others. The second thing I'll say is all of the short stories kind of left me wanting more information about certain things that were happening in the stories. There just wasn't enough detail to give me a big picture of what was going on. It was interesting following the mystery and seeing how it was solved, but I found myself wanting more with each short story. With that, I can kind of see a comparison to when I read Partners in Crime, part of the Tommy and Tuppence series, because that was a book of short stories as well, and I kind of felt the same way with that. Each of those short stories left me wanting more as well. And so I feel like my experience of reading short stories from Agatha Christie so far has not been the greatest. That's not to say I'm never going to read a short story of hers again. I definitely am. I'm very much looking forward to reading some of the short stories featuring Hercule Poirot. I hope to get to those sometime in the future. I want to read the novels first before I get to his short stories, but I'm really looking forward to eventually getting to those. And I'm a firm believer that just because somebody writes short stories that aren't that great, that doesn't mean they can't write better ones, and that I will find better ones written by that person. So I'm going into my journey with Agatha Christie with that mindset. I have a feeling that she's got some real bangers in her short story collections. So we will see what happens with that. But overall, I very much enjoyed my read through of The Mysterious Mr. Quin. I thought it was a fun little collection. And the ending really wowed me. I was pretty impressed with the ending. I didn't see the actual ending coming, although I kind of got inklings throughout the story of what we might get at the end. But the way she ended it was really satisfying. So I think it's time to talk about how I would rank the book. I'm going to put this in my shiny tier. It was good. It wasn't spectacular. But I'm really, really glad I read it, and I really think I might read it again down the road at some point, but not anytime soon. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this book. Does it sound like something that's up your alley? Do you think you would enjoy reading it? Do you enjoy mysteries? Do you enjoy Agatha Christie? And if so, if you're an Agatha Christie fan, I definitely highly recommend this. It really showcases some of her more unique writing skills, and I definitely think it's a must-read for any Agatha Christie fan, especially if you're an Agatha Christie completionist. So that's all I've got to say for this. Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, guys, make sure you read more books. I'll see you soon.